I'll now recognize myself for an opening statement. Today we are joined by the Attorney General of the United States over a matter that this committee has invested more than a year in research. In November of 2009, Fast and Furious opens. In December of 2009, DEA meets with the ATF and gives them info on Fast and Furious targets, info that could well have ended the operation. On January 6, 2010, Fast and Furious becomes, in fact, a joint exercise. On March 15th of 2010, the first Federal wiretaps are issued in this case. December 15th of 2010, Brian Terry is murdered with weapons found at the scene that came from Fast and Furious. On January 27th, Senator Grassley first asked Department of Justice about Fast and Furious, and within days, we are given a false statement of facts denying that guns were ever allowed to walk. Within days of that, we began to know that Fast and Furious was going to be difficult. That was more or less Groundhog Day a year ago. Today is Groundhog Day again. This committee has lost its patience to wait longer. We will not wait until next Groundhog Day to get answers for the American people, for Brian Terry, and for others. On March 3rd of 2011, John Dotson goes public. Agent Dotson is here today. He, too, deserves to have this nightmare of uncertainty, of having a temporary assignment, of not being allowed to do the job for which he has dedicated his career, put behind him. On October 11th, after months and months and months of this committee trying to get further voluntary cooperation, we issued subpoenas for documents. To date, we have been told two things. First of all, they're difficult and time-consuming to give us, and yet 10 times as many documents were provided to the Inspector General. More than 3 times as many people have been able to be interviewed by the IG, the Inspector General. Sorry, Mr. Attorney General, by your Inspector General. During that period of time, whistleblowers have consistently brought us additional information. That information allows us to glean more than most of the documents we've received through discovery. The minority can say what they want and issue the opinions they want, the memos they want. They have been absent from this, and I'm disappointed for that. This is a legitimate requirement of this committee to get to the bottom of it and to get genuine change so this cannot happen again. And I repeat, the genuine change, the safeguards, the protections that were not there apparently before, so this cannot happen again. We have asked you for documents, and if you look at the totality of government, we've asked for very little compared to the IG's offices. We believe, and I think the ranking member will join me in this, that we deserve those answers in at least as timely a fashion as your own IG gets. It is our opinion that we haven't gotten that the need for over-managing and redacting and careful looking by teams of lawyers have gotten in the way of the legitimate speed with which we should get that. We're going to ask you many things today. Hopefully you came prepared to know a great deal about Fast and Furious. The important things that I'm going to ask today are, what can you do to bring this to a close? What can you do before the IG completes her investigation to allow the American people to see change that tells them this is no longer going on and it won't go on in the future? Lastly, before I recognize the ranking member, it is this majority, at least, committee's belief that this is an operation that included reckless behavior at ATF, failure to push harder and inform more by DEA and the FBI, a U.S. attorney who clearly didn't do his job in a way that anyone should be proud of. We now have a Justice Department official who has taken the fifth. We've moved up a ways, and all of those people should be ashamed that Brian Terry is dead because they didn't do as good a job as they should. Kenneth Melson has said that publicly and privately, that he bears a great deal of that blame. The point here today is we want to know how justice will oversee every local operation, every state, every one of the very agencies that are either under your authority or in a joint exercise, joint task force become under your authority, how you'll ensure for the American people that this will not happen again, or at least the systems are in place to give us a confidence that it is much more unlikely to happen. Those are the items that I come here today, asked you to come here today, and I appreciate your being here voluntarily to answer. It's the committee's responsibility to ask. I hope we will get the answers and the commitments today that we asked for. I recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
If you want to more completely answer that question, please.
I'm not sure where I was, but I was just talking about state.
The interaction between you and the State, the
Right.
Department of Justice and the State Department.
Right. There is the
Oh, and
merit.
Fast and Furious, and that's the concern here is Fast and Furious.
Right. We work together with our State Department counterparts on a number of things in connection with Mexico. There is the Merida Initiative that really kind of is the umbrella way in which we operate in Mexico in a law enforcement way. And so there is a lot of contact at lower levels and not so lower levels. I know our Deputy Attorney General speaks a great deal with his counterpart at the State Department.
My question, Mr. Attorney General, is the testimony from October 27th of this year that Secretary Clinton gave it over in the Senate, where she said, quote, I can tell you that based on the information apart from the State Department that would deal with this kind of issue, we have no record of any request for coordination. We have no record of any kind of notice or heads up. How is it that the Secretary of State is saying we've never been involved in any way, shape, or form in Fast and Furious, and you're testifying that it's happening on a regular basis?
Well, you got to put this in the appropriate context. What I'm saying is that we interact with them in a number of ways. Now, Fast and Furious might not be a primary thing that we are talking about with the State Department. We are certainly working more closely with DHS when it comes to Fast and Furious. But those kinds of things are discussed. It might not be, I think, a primary thing that exists between a topic of conversation between State and DHS.
And I guess that's the concern, Mr. Attorney General. We have 1,500 weapons. We got 300 dead people in Mexico. We have a dead U.S. agent. We've had untold number of hearings and discussions and press reports. And yet you have the people at the highest level of the government saying, well, we don't talk to each other because our people don't tell us information because we got to remain ignorant because we're going to have to testify and they don't want to get me involved. And at the same time, you're telling me that they're interacting with the State Department on a regular basis. And the State Department, the Secretary, is telling us it isn't happening. And Janet Napolitano is saying very similar things in the Department of Homeland Security. If we're going to solve this problem, make sure it never happens again, we have to solve these challenges. And I have no confidence that you've addressed it or offered anything to actually solve it. Yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. Did the gentleman want to follow up?
I'm not sure about the context in which that remark was made by Secretary Clinton, but I can tell you that when it comes to the issue of violence in Mexico, the problem of guns going to Mexico, we are joined with our partners
Mr. Chairman,
at the State Department.
Can I read the question? Can I read the question?
Does the gentleman want the question read back?
No, can I just keep?
No, the question that Secretary Clinton got. You asked a legitimate question. I don't know what context Secretary Clinton asked.
The gentleman was suspended. If you'll make that question available to the Attorney General's staff so they can brief him, we will return to that out of order to get an answer. But I think, in fairness, we've given sufficient time. If you'll make it available to staff, we'll make sure we get to it before the end of the hearing.
So why don't you give us those documents? The conclusion that I come to is there's some things in there that's being hidden that you don't want us to see. I don't know if it involves you or some other ATF agents or some other members of the Justice Department, but this committee is the Oversight Committee, and we have every right under the Constitution to check on what you're doing. We're supposed to oversee the executive branch, and you are part of that branch. So for you to deny this committee anything like that is just dead wrong, and I don't think you're going to find any way that you can do it. And I would urge the chairman to move a contempt citation against you if you don't give them to us.